All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So I have great pleasure to introduce you Professor Benoît Mac. He's a professor at UCL Louvain, Université Catholique de Louvain. So I'm
not that Catholic, don't be worried. Doesn't help to do science.
No, it doesn't. No, dogmas, it doesn't work. So he's leading the so-called Pixel and Interactions Lab in Belgium. And Benoît Mac is doing research on wavelet-based image compression, on image security, and on medical imaging applied to image-guided proton therapy. So a variety of subjects related to imaging, and also to neuroimaging. He is a senior associate editor of the IEEE Transactions on Image Processing, and founding editor-in-chief of the Journal on Multimodal Interfaces, an Elsevier journal. He's a fellow of the fellow member of the IEEE, and a member of the Royal Academy of Science of Belgium.
Yeah.
I didn't know that existed in Belgium.
Yeah, it exists. It's small, but it exists.
It's the other part of Belgium.
Yeah, it's only on
the No, on the two sides of Belgium.
It does.
Yeah,
also
in
in
one
North.
place, but there are meetings in Dutch and meetings in French.
Really?
Yeah. And sometimes we meet together.
Okay, c'est bon. Allez-y.
After the bedankt, huh? Yeah. So thank you very much. So as Jan has explained, my field is more image processing than medical physics, but I've been very lucky because during my career I met nice people and nice companies also. We are very close to my lab a company which name is IBA, and they asked us to develop image processing, to develop image devices. We developed with them a specific cone beam CT for image-guided proton therapy. And so I've learned a lot with them. But my field is image processing, but I was in contact with nice people. And also I have a nice friend that some of you know, who is Philippe Lambin doing radiomix. Philippe Lambin is a very old friend. I know him since I'm 12. I hesitated to do medicine. He hesitated to do engineering study. We split, and then we met again. And we are doing more and more stuff together on radiomix. And I will say a few words about that at the end of my talk. So I was, as Jan said, a stupid manager, a politician, and stuff like that. And now I'm trying to be back a scientist. And that's the reason why I'm here during one sabbatical year in McGill, because I want to have 100% time to think about new ideas around that. And I'm very happy to be in Montreal, because in Montreal is really the hotspot today for machine learning. In my field of image processing, 5 years ago, when you went to an image processing conference, there were a lot about algorithms and stuff like that. And then deep learning and machine learning was increased. Nowadays, when I'm going to an image processing conference, 50% of the papers are related to deep learning. And deep learning, the nice place to be is here with Joël Pinault, Yoshua Benjo, and people like that. And you are nice people because you have a lot of data. For machine learning to be running and to be efficient, you need data. And in a service like here, there are a lot of data and there are a lot of nice challenges to address in machine learning. And so I'm trying with my team in Belgium to be more connected to machine learning and to continue the work that we are doing in image-guided proton therapy. As there are some students, I have been allowed by Jan to do some basic stuff about proton therapy before presenting the topics on which we are working. I will give more details about how we work on mobile tumors at the second part of my talk, but the first part of my talk will be basic stuff around proton therapy, because I think that some of the students maybe do not know something about this technology. So you know that more than 50% of a patient in oncology receive radiation treatment as initial in connection with relapse of disease and even with palliative purpose. And so it will not decrease. And even when I'm speaking with Philippe Lambin about immunotherapy, he says if you want to increase the efficiency of an immunotherapy, it could be interesting to use protons to send some cells in the blood, and it will increase the immunotherapy. So immunotherapy will not stop radiation therapy. It will always be combined. And so it's really interesting to continue to explore this field, even if there are new technology to treat cancer. It's very important to be sharp on this in this domain. So you know the principle, the basic idea that is if you provide some radiation to a cell, if this is a cancerous cell, there is a higher probability to kill the cell with radiation than to kill the healthy cells. But of course, if you put too much radiation, you kill also the healthy cells. And so there is a gap where you have to be. And there are a lot of parameters that people here around are exploring, like the oxygenation of the cell, vascularization of the cell, epoxy, and there are a lot of stuff which modify this curve. And nowadays there are people doing dose painting who try to use all the parameters to kill more efficiently the cell. But the basic stuff is that you can kill cells and you kill efficiently a cancerous cell when you use radiation, and there is this curve depending on many parameters. And of course, the radiation therapy has to be thought in the fact that, taking into the fact that you want to kill the tumor, but you want to leave the healthy tissue undestroyed. For example, if you have a spinal cord, a tumor very close to the spinal cord, you want to kill the tumor, but the spinal cord must be safe because you want the guy to still be able to run and to walk after the treatment. And this is really important. And so a key point in radiation therapy, it's, you know that obviously, is the organ at risk, normal tissues, which will influence the planning. You can put a lot of radiation, but you have to protect the organ at risk. And we do a lot of work on organ at risk. Shirin asked me about algorithms for segmenting organ at risk. Segmentation of organ at risk, automated segmentation of organ at risk is still a hot topic today. You can segment by co-registration atlas, but you can also use deep learning to improve the quality of the segmentation. This is stuff on which we are still active. So if you see, for example, this neck, this is very classical, I assume. It's a picture that I've picked on the web. You see that there is a guy with a tumor on the neck. The brown area is a tumor on the neck, and you want to put a lot of doses on this tumor. And the tumor is delineated by the gross tumor volume. And of course, some medical doctors know that the tumor will propagate on the fat area, but will be stopped by the bone. And so they say, if there are some fat area around the tumor, I will delineate and I will put a doses on what they call the clinical target volume. And then they have some organ at risk. Here is the neck. And you see here there is the spinal cord, and there are the parotid glands. And you want the guy, after the treatment, to be still able to produce salivia. Because if you don't care, you will destroy the parotid, and the guy will have a quality of life which will decrease a lot. And so a treatment planning, a typical treatment planning, will put some doses on the tumor and some acceptable doses on the organ at risk. And you want, of course, to minimize the doses on the green area and to maximize the doses on the brown area and to put enough doses on the clinical target volume for the area where the tumor can propagate. There are some medical doctors and some medical physicists in the room. Jan, if I'm saying something wrong, just raise your hand and correct me, please. Okay, and so there are two ways to provide radiation on the tumor. The first way is to use photons, and the second way is to use particles. And there are two kinds of particles that can be used. They are protons, and they are hadrons. Hadrons are carbons. They are heavier particles than protons. Okay? So the first way to do it is to use photons. And if you use photons, in fact, you will have, and we will describe that in more details, you will have a lot of energy entering in the skin, and then the energy is decreasing, and then you have even an exit dose. This is when you use photon. Photon is what you use with X-ray. IMRT, X-ray are photons. You have a lot of energy, and you are burning the skin of the guy if you put too much, and then the energy is decreasing. and you have even an exit dose. When you use protons, the protons are entering into the body, they collide atoms, and then after, when the speed is low enough, you have a big peak of energy which is very localized, and all the energy will be on the tumor, and there is no exit energy, nothing after the protons. So if you use photons, as you know that the energy is decreasing entering the body, you will use many directions. You will put some doses as a combination, as an efficient combination of photons going from different directions to target the tumor, the red area, which is here on the, and that's what you do here. Huh? You do IMRT in McGill, you do a lot, you are very strong on that. And it's working very well for many cancers. Proton does better for some cancer, but for a majority of cancer, IMRT is sufficient. Some cancer need to do better. For example, pediatric cancer or a tumor very close to an organ at risk. If you have a tumor in the brain very close to the spinal cord, you do IMRT, you will put too much doses on the spinal cord. It will not work properly. So what is the principle of the proton therapy? The photon therapy, when you look, if you have the skin of the patient, which is here, when the photons are entering in the body of the guy, the energy is decreasing slowly, and you combine different directions to get the energy on the focal point, which is the tumor. When you enter with the proton beam, you are losing a little bit of energy, you are colliding the atoms, and when you begin to be slow, after a while you get a peak, which is known as the Bragg peak. The name of the guy who found this phenomenon is Bragg. And the Bragg peak, the peak of Bragg, is there after a while, and it depends on the quantity of atoms that you have collided, and it depends also on the energy of the beam. Okay? The higher the energy of the beam, the further you will go. So if you need to have a tumor, to treat a tumor here, you will choose a first energy to put some doses at the beginning of the tumor, and then you will augment the energy of the beam until you reach the end point. Okay? So you modulate the energy of the ion beam to cover the tumor area. And if you do so, you can have treatment plan like this one, which is very better than this one done by IMRT. Some of those treatments are very important for pediatric cancer, because if you do pediatric cancer, you have a lot of cartilage, the growing area. Or do you translate cartilage?
Cartilage.
Cartilage, yeah. Okay. And so it's very important to protect the kids, the little kids, because if you have a tumor in the brain with a kid, if you do normal radiotherapy, the face of the kid can, when he is growing, can be very awful. So it's very important for pediatric cancer, and I think that pediatric cancer here from this hospital are sent to Boston, to the Massachusetts General Hospital, to do it. So if I go further, in fact, protons are very exciting, but protons do not forgive, because it's a very hot dose, a very hot point, very localized. So if you have misalignment, you don't provide the doses at the right place. If you have an error in the estimation of the stopping power, I said to you that the stopping power is driven by the collision with the atoms, but the atoms in the body, you need to have a clear picture of the atoms of the body. You cannot assume that the body is water and only water. There are many different things. The stopping power is influenced by a precise knowledge of the atoms in the body. And of course, you have the tumor shrinkage. It's a very efficient tool to do adaptive proton therapy. You don't give the doses at once. You do many fractions, 3, 4, 5 fractions. And so each time you give the doses, after 1 week, the organs can have shrink, and you have to take that into account. So that's very exciting for me, because proton therapy needs image processing, needs image guidance to solve this problem of putting the right doses at the right place. Otherwise, the effect will be very annoying. IMRT is less sensitive to misalignment. If you are afraid about misalignment, don't use proton, use IMRT, because it's a combination of stuff. For proton, it's the best because you have less secondary cancer, you have less secondary effect, but it's more dangerous. And to be sure of what you want to do, you need imaging. And so this is MGH Proton Treatment Center. This is Yves Jongen with a cyclotron. You need a cyclotron for proton therapy because you need to accelerate the protons. You need one big thing which is called the gantry, which is a big device which allows to take the output of the cyclotron and to provide this output at the right place. And you need some imaging stuff, these two stuff are imaging stuff, to be sure that the patient is at the right place. And so I'm again to use a company video. This is just to show you the size. MGH is a very big size device that allows. This is one of my PhD students there, Jonathan, who's there. And so to summarize proton therapy, I invite you to have a
Today there are three main types of treatment to fight cancer: surgery, chemotherapy, and radiotherapy. Unlike traditional radiotherapy that uses photons to irradiate and kill tumor cells, proton therapy is an advanced form of treatment using protons.
I'm sorry.
These particles give proton therapy its many advantages.
Maybe I will go just a little bit.
Proton therapy's greatest advantage over conventional radiation therapy is its accuracy and its ability to spare healthy tissues.
Sorry about this sound.
Conventional X-rays are made of photons that pass through the body and deposit considerable energy before and after the tumor. Physical property called the Bragg peak. They're able to deposit less energy on their way. The proton originates from the ion source via a gantry, one layer at a time, pixel by pixel, to precisely match the shape of the tumor. With this active scanning technique, the physicians are able to change the proton dose at any specific location in the target. This allows...
It was working properly when I tried it, but probably the video on my USB key, sorry for that. So, up. Yes. So, this is the introduction about proton therapy. Sorry, it's working better, usually, the video at least. I would like to say some few words about what are the challenges. Of course, you have understood that you need delineation of volumes, and organ at risk and the tumor are important. And you have to have a dose delivery strategy, which is based on the estimation of the stopping power. And the estimation of the stopping power is based on CT. So what you do a 3D CT or a 4D CT if you have a mobile tumor. And you can compute from the 4D CT the stopping power of the atoms that the ion beam will encounter. And so the stopping power is obtained generally by a calibration curve, which allows to transform the way the X-ray propagates through the body. The way the X-ray propagates to the body is measured by the value of the X-ray, and it's measured in Hounsfield unit. And you can transform this Hounsfield unit into stopping power. But it depends on the composition of the tissue of the patient, and it can vary in time. If the guy, for example, has a tumor which will be treated by an ion beam entering through the noise, if there are some water, if there are some modification, the stopping power has to take into account the different kind of different things that are entering here. So a conversion from Hounsfield number to electron density is not sufficient. So proton loss energy by ionization, multiple column scattering, and non-elastic nuclear reaction is quite complicated. And so we need people doing research in this link between stopping power and we need people like you, Jan, doing Monte Carlo simulation, which are able to do and to take into account all what's happening in this phenomena, in the interaction between the ion beam and the different elements in the body of the patient. It's possible also to use combination of proton beams just to focus on a hot area and to spare critical structure. And that's the reason why I think that there would be a lot of interest to do machine learning there. So why doing machine learning in treatment planning for proton therapy? And we do it more and more. And I try to establish some connection with Joël Pinault. We try to have a joint PhD. And there is you, I forgot your name, doing your thesis with Joël, on the third point there, deep learning for the fourth point. But the first point, of course, is to do segmentation of organ at risk. And the traditional way to do segmentation of organ at risk is to co-register an atlas. For example, in head and neck cancer, the periotite is always in the same place. The spinal cord is always on the same place. So you can construct atlases and do segmentation by a top-down approach. You co-register an atlas on the body of the person, and you are able to segment the organ at risk. When you use deep learning, you use convolutional networks. So you look locally. You do some convolution with kernels, you do some local analysis of the image, and then the deep learning approach is to do a hierarchy and to group together different local convolutions. So it's a kind of bottom-up approach. Atlas-based is top-down, deep learning is bottom-up. And this is a topic that I would like to address this year, is how can we combine the two? How can we use Atlas combined with deep learning to do better segmentation, to do more robust segmentation? This is a topic that I would like to publish this year, or at least to start this year and to reach the level of publication soon. Deep learning for dose prediction. There are a lot of people drawing on pictures the dose prediction, the dose that they want to deliver to patients. And there are some new paper, very recent paper, which use those huge databases to use deep learning for dose prediction. This is very exciting. And the kind of technology for dose prediction is the same that the technology for organ segmentation. They use also UNet technology that some of you know. It's a way to do segmentation by using deep learning. This is a topic that I would like to address too. Jan, you are skeptical, but I think it's very interesting to see it. Can we, in some complicated configuration, gain time in treatment planning by replacing Monte Carlo simulation by deep learning? If you have a Monte Carlo engine, you can do many simulations. So maybe we can constitute some dictionary, elementary dictionary of typical situation, or maybe do other things. And maybe it's possible to replace heavy Monte Carlo simulation by deep learning. Maybe if you want to add some comments on your own work at the end of the talk, I will give you the floor to complement my talk. And one thing that I would like to do with Joël Pinault, and we are starting to have a PhD and a postdoc on that thing, is to use reinforcement learning for treatment planning. If we have a good model of interaction between radiation and tumor, for example, non-homogeneous or using radiomic features, you know that if you have a tumor which is non-homogeneous, you start the treatment and the non-homogeneity are disappearing, you have a good sign about your treatment. So you can use reinforcement learning to try to simulate different configuration, different type of treatment, and it can be very helpful. So this is for treatment planning. And now I would like to enter in some other stuff, which are the second step. I took a slide from UCLA Health, which they want to do treatment planning automation, and they say, and it's the same here, the same in Louvain, and there are a lot of patient plan database, a lot of published standards, and how can we do reinforcement learning to automate the planification? This is really a hot topic, and I would like to be connected with Montreal in the long term to continue that kind of work. I'm quite sure we can provide things with machine learning there. So I'm going back to the peak of Bragg. The question when you do proton therapy is a question of range uncertainty. If you are not sure where the peak of Bragg will stop, you need to augment the area that you will paint with your protons, because you want to cover the whole tumor, okay? So if you are not sure about the position of your Bragg peak, if you have 4 millimeters of uncertainty, you will take the position of the tumor that you guess, and you will add, you will add 3 millimeters around the tumor, which is, you know, the orange effect. It's a big volume because you will add a lot around the tumor to take into account the range uncertainty. And the range uncertainty are in the treatment planning. So you can have different problems. The conversion of Ansfield unit to stopping power is something that I said, but it's also in the treatment delivery. And I will explore two things, which are the organ motion and the patient setups, which are incertitude, that have to be reduced. If I can reduce that, I can reduce the quantity of doses that I will provide to the patient. So there is it's really the big deal that we have to do with people working on proton therapy is really to be more and more precise, so that if we are very sure, we can reduce the range. That's really the key point. Okay? And I will, this is the second part of my talk, I will speak about image-guided delivery, the patient setup. We used classically DR, simple 2D radiology, and we developed with IBE a cone-beam CT, which is a small scanner that can be put in the treatment room. We developed some tools for the Bragg peak position. I will say a few words about the gamma camera, and I will say a little bit more about proton imaging. In fact, the proton, if you augment the energy, they can cross the body, and instead of making a picture with X-ray, you could imagine to create a scanner with protons, with the protons going through the body. I will say a few words about this proton imaging, and then I will speak about motion tracking. Nice problem for image processing guys, for motion tracking in by the DR and MRI-based motion tracking. MRI is non-ionizing, no bad things on the patient, and so MRI is something which is very exciting for a lot of people doing radiotherapy, because people would like to construct LINAC inside MRI. It's already existing. And IBA is trying to develop a proton therapy machine inside an MRI. There are some will to do that, and that will be very exciting for motion tracking, and there are some good ideas behind that. And I will also speak about the organ tracking, when the organs are changing. How can we track them to do adaptive proton therapy, to do adaptive radiotherapy? So the first thing is the patient setup. So you have a treatment plan, which is drawn on a CT. You assume that you have a good conversion between the Ansfield unit and the stopping power, so you have the best treatment. What is really important when the patient enter in the machine is just to verify that the treatment plan, the proton beam, will enter the body the right direction with the right position and so forth. And so the initial thing which is done, which is very classical, is just to take two views and try to co-register the 3D view, the 3D plan on the 2D view. And this is very classical in image processing. So you have two views here, and what you do, you take the 3D view and you have the CT here with the 3D imaging. You create two virtual projection, and you verify that your two-dimensional projection from the 3D are the same that the two DR that you are observing on the panel, on the flat panel, which are here. And so there are some nice algorithms which allow you to verify that the 3D is properly set compared to the 2D. You create the virtual projection, and you compare the virtual projection to the real projection, and if it's not good, you move until you reach the right position. So nowadays, the people are entering in the room, and if there is a misalignment, we restart sometimes the planning. But it's possible to do things which are more clever than that. And then a second step, which is even more easy, is to construct a CT. A cone beam CT is a CT where you don't have a CT slide by slide, but you have a flat panel, and the flat panel is turning around the body of the, you have an X-ray source, you have a flat panel, and the patient is here. And this is something that we have done with IBA. It's classical, cone beam CT technology is well mastered, but it's very efficient to be in the proton therapy room. And we have built this cone beam CT with IBA with a first patient treated in Philadelphia at UPenn. We used, for those doing image processing, non-rigid co-registration based on morphons, and we are really able to adapt and to see the treatment plan on the body of the guy. This is a picture on a casemat that we have, a bunker that we have close to my lab, where we've made all the stuff needed to design the cone beam CT. We have explored all the reconstruction algorithms and all the stuff which allow to be good for what we had to do. But this is classical work, and this is the first cone beam CT at UPenn that we have taken with this technology. So these are the uncertainties in proton therapy. So as I said, the stopping power map is something which is a problem, and one way to validate where the Bragg peak is stopping is to use way to measure the Bragg peak. And the most obvious way is to, when you have a Bragg peak inside the body of a guy, there are some gamma ray going out of the body at the Bragg peak position. And so those gamma ray can be observed with a dedicated camera. You have a collimator, and you have some detector of the gamma ray, and it's possible to find the profile of the given profile corresponding to a Bragg peak in the body of a person. And so we did here some machine learning because we learned dictionaries of patterns of gamma camera, and it was quite good, but it's not a technology that will be developed a lot, I think, because there is not a consensus to use gamma ray and gamma camera for detecting where the proton beam is. A second technology, which is probably more exciting, is to use proton radiography. And in fact, you have here the source, you have the object that will be treated by proton therapy, the patient. Here it's a phantom, a head phantom. And what you have here, you use with an ionizing chamber, to see what will be the stopping power of the patient. So the image, the proton radiograph, resembles to that, but it contains far more information. I will detail it. So the idea is to use an ionizing chamber. If you have a 230 MeV ion beam going out of a cyclotron, you enter this into a MLIC, and you can measure the depth in the ionizing chamber. And in fact, the equivalent water, if it was the water, the equivalent depth of such an ion beam would be 30 centimeters. The maximum power of an ion beam of IBA today allows to penetrate the equivalent water of 30 centimeters. And this can be detected in the ionizing chamber. And you see here that you have far more than one value. You have far more than the range. You have really the profile of the Bragg peak in the ionizing chamber. And of course, the step is to put the patient in between and to see the range reduction so that you can compute what will be the stopping power of the ion beam. Because you put the patient here, you will have a shift in your MLIC, in your ionizing chamber, corresponding to the contents, to the atomic contents of the patient. And so you can construct that way proton radiography. And so we have worked with a guy, Sylvain Defette. He will present his PhD thesis next Monday. If there are some people interested in the room, I can send you a copy of the thesis on this proton radiography. And in fact, what we get, what is important to notice is that each point of the proton radiography is not in an intensity, but a profile. Corresponding to each point of the image, you have a profile of the proton Bragg peak. Okay? And this profile can encounter some complicated characteristic. If you have the interface between a bone and a lung, the profile will be a little bit more complicated. So what we have done with this proton imaging is to see when we simulate the penetration of the ion beam, where is the peak of Bragg in the body of a guy, and can we validate it with proton imaging? These are the range error maps. The range error maps are the maps of error between a simulation of the proton imaging and the real observation by the proton imaging. And the simulation of proton beam or the proton beam are stopping in the body of a person are provided in an open platform, OpenRegis, an open source platform. You can use it if you want, and you can use all the simulation tools there to see where the peak of Bragg is stopping. And these are the kind of image range error map that we get. And you see here on the teeth, around the teeth of the patient, we have some problem. We have some problem at the interface between the bone and the skins. So there are some specific interface. There are some implants, 2 implants here in the body in the head of the person. And so the implants can give very big problem to plan proton therapy because we don't know what will be the stopping power of the implants. So you see the errors are on some dedicated place which can be analyzed by the proton imaging. And so you can use these range error maps to improve the calibration, to see different things. And by co-registering the CT on the proton radiography, you can get better conversion between the Hounsfield map and the stopping power. This is something very interesting. Something that we did also is to use the complex shape that we observe in each point of the proton radiography to create image with higher resolution. We use wavelet theory and sparse inverse method to improve the quality of the image because each spot, when you use proton therapy, in fact, you use a spot of 8 millimeters, which is scanning the tumor, and the width of the tumor is retrieved in the body of the person, but using the profile, it's possible to improve considerably the resolution of the proton radiography. This is some recent results that we have obtained. So I will jump above all this. Some people think that proton therapy could be replaced by dual CT, and I will knock the door of Hugo to see how it's working. He published a nice paper on that. And here the workflow proposal for the proton radiography is to do the planning CT, the proton radiography, to register X-ray on the CT, and to do the better assessment. So I want to say, before I end, Jan, I still have...
You still have about 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Oh, so
10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay.
Leave some more room for questions.
So you can see the cyclotron and the gantry as a gun shooting ion, proton, in the body of the person. And sometimes the target, the tumor that you want to touch, is moving. And there, if you don't do something for this motion, you will have big problems. And so this is complicated and furthermore complicated because you do pencil beam scanning. So what you do for the tumor, I wanted to show the video, but the video was corrupted. You want to scan the tumor and to put some doses on the tumor by something which is scanning, and the tumor is moving due to respiration. And so it's a complicated stuff to be sure that you have the right deposition at the right place. If you have liver tumor, when you respire, there is the diaphragm motion, and the liver is moving itself also. And so it's really important to develop strategies to be able, when you do proton therapy, to be able to follow those tumors. Lung tumors are very interesting for proton therapy because if you have a lung tumor close to the heart or close to the spinal cord, it's very interesting to use proton therapy. You will gain a lot. And the gain for that kind of tumor of proton therapy is very important. And so I have currently 2 ongoing research on this mobile tumor. One is by Antoine Aspels, and the idea is to take simple X-ray imaging to track the tumor in the device. If we do X-ray imaging, we cannot do a lot of picture because otherwise we will deliver too much X-ray doses in the body of the patient. And so we have to be very cautious on the amount of picture that we take. And so Antoine, and I will not elaborate too much, has developed a system which allows to take pictures, the minimum pictures at the best time to have the best prediction of the position of the tumor. So we say the patient has a budget. We can take, for example, 20 images for this patient, but the 20 images have to be taken at the best time to have the best possible prediction of the motion of the tumor. And this is interesting for people who like signal processing because so you have the X-ray, you have the segmentation of the tumor, and so you will look at the tumor position and you will use a predictive model to shoot the protons at the right time. And so you have to take the next shot timing on the basis of a predictive model because you will measure the position at the same time, so a little bit later than the proton time. So you need to predict the position of the tumor. You cannot measure it exactly at the same time that you shoot proton. There is a delay between the two, so you need a predictive model. And this predictive model has to be done with the minimum possible of images. And this can be formulated. This can be formulated as a Kalman filter tracking, where the measurement, you have an equation. This is, for those who like equation, this is an autoregressive model with noise. And this is the observation model. You have some measurement. And what is funny here is that you have a kind of switching between no measure and effective measure. Sometimes this matrix H here is equal to 0. So you reach a nonlinear problem. And it was very interesting to, I will jump the equation, to see what are the best time to do the measurement for a predictive model. And so we formulate the problem in an interesting manner, but it was a nonlinear problem. And so we used some heuristic optimization based on genetic algorithm to solve and to pick the best time to have the best measurement with a limited amount of budget for the measurement. So it's exciting to work with you guys because you are giving us problems which are nice on a mathematical point of view, on a signal processing point of view. And we show that we do better with optimized shooting time than on a regular shooting time. A second anchor research which is ongoing is to use MRI in-room MRI. If you have a LINAC inside an MRI or a proton therapy inside an MRI, you can take the MRI in real time and try to adapt the 4D CT on the MRI. So I will show you a picture. So you have here, you have 2 images, one 4D CT and one MRI. I will show here. You see here the CT and the MRI. You see here that during the CT, the guy was respiring very much with a higher amplitude than when he was in the MRI. And so we use kind of virtual fiducial on the CT to interpolate the CT on the real-time value that we get in the MRI. And so we have developed some algorithms to try to find with some fiducial which are put by hand, but we need to have good algorithms to track this motion and to be able to adapt the motion on the one onto the other. And so what we did, we used a 4D CT with expiration and inhale and exhale phase. This is the respiration observed by just a coronal view with MRI, and we are able to construct the right view of the CT on the basis of this navigator, this virtual fiducial, which are put in the MRI. And so I think it's interesting, that kind of technology, because you don't need to put a fiducial like in CyberKnife, but you could use real-time MRI to guide the treatment of a moving tumor inside in the CT. So the CT is here, and you create the right CT from the moving MRI. You have a 2D MRI, a 4D CT, and it's possible 2D plus T, 4D CT, and it's possible to have the right phase, the right interpolation of the phase. So it's based on some noise algorithm which interpolate the motion from the previous cell, but I will not enter in those equations. We'll jump for that. And so the validation, so you can see what you gain in the treatment plan. If I see here what we do, so we have the CT, which is on the right hand, the real-time MR, which is here, and you see that we succeeded by taking the two curves, which are only one curve of motion. This is the vertical motion, and you see the proton beam entering here, and all the PBS, we see the tracking of the tumor, which is moving up and down in the liver, and you see that we are able to do the spot in the right place. And here the treatment will include two spots, one spot entering in this part of the body, and a second spot after working on the other part, and we get interesting results. This is ongoing research. Maybe, Gabriela, we could do some stuff around that later. Damien Dasnoy he had done all the software. He's working, he has a lot of databases of patients. We didn't write yet paper on that. Maybe there are some collaboration on moving tumor that we could have together. Who knows? And you will see after, it's too slow. The second spot entering, and here, and you see there is the tumor painting, which is properly done. Okay. So the second thing is the adaptive proton therapy and the tumor shrinkage. This is when you treat a tumor, an image from the MGH. After a while, the tumor will shrink. And the problem is to do adaptive proton therapy. I don't know if you do adaptive IMRT here, or if one day you will do it. But the idea is to track the shrinkage of the dose and to recompute the dose to be able to track the shrinkage of the dose. And for that, we use deep learning. We use UNet to do it. Those who know UNet will recognize that kind of stuff that we can use to track the deformation of the tumor. And using classical co-registration and active contours for deformation in head and neck is perfectly sufficient. But when you have in the pelvic area where a lot of things appear, you can have matter which adds and so forth. In the pelvic area, UNet is doing deep learning is doing far better than classical segmentation algorithm. Again, I think too many transparent, and you recognize probably the UNet here because you are already used to do it. I will jump about that and all the results because I have no time to do it, and I will conclude to take some question by what we did with IBA. In fact, we have developed that with IBA, the Conbeam CT, tracking moving tumor, non-registration, fast dose engine. These are the things that we have done. And what we do nowadays, the new program that we have with IBA is to use big data for proton therapy with those things. I will jump on that. The team, some heads are known here. In the team, you have Edmond Sterpin. Maybe some of you know Edmond. This is my team here. Some people from IBA who are here. And Sylvain Defay is the guy who developed proton imaging. Damien Dasnoy has developed the stuff related to the moving tumor. The Kalman filtering with switch is developed by Antoine Aspels, and there are other guys. Yafei developed all the things related to the gamma camera. And Edmond and this guy are doing a lot about medical physics. Maybe you know Xavier Gates. He's a guy doing a lot about lungs tumor. Is in the radiotherapy service of Saint-Luc Hospital in Brussels. Okay, and that's it. And that's the whole project that we have. Just to recall, to conclude. So, why I'm interested in machine learning for proton therapy, for segmentation tumors and organ at risk, and tracking this tumor, for treatment planning. Monte Carlo, it's a question mark. And the next step is that the use of proton therapy has been done by business argument in the USA. For example, they have treated a lot of prostate cancer with proton therapy, which was not justified. And so we try to develop model based on machine learning, which can demonstrate the advantage of protons compared to IMRT. This is really something important, and that has to be connected with trusted distributed learning for radiomics. These are things which are really important to take proton where they have a significant advantage compared to IMRT. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. A lot of material there.
Yeah, maybe too many, but it was just to give the picture that what we are doing in Belgium, and also, really, I think that you are lucky because you are in Montreal, and you have Joël Pinault, you have Yoshua Benjo, and so far close to you, and to be connected with those guys doing machine learning I think there could be breakthrough in the image-guided radiotherapy through the use of machine learning. I think it's really important. If there is only one message, keep this one. And I really want to spend my year here, my sabbatical year, to try to establish that kind of connection. Yeah.
Very good. Do we have questions?
So about the segmentation and UNet, have you had more success with just organs at risk and also with tumors?
We start with organ at risk, the vessel, but with tumor, it will be more easy because the tumor does not deform. And the problem in the pelvic area is that everything is moving, and the colon can be filled with some gas and so forth. So it's the complicated situation in the pelvic is because everything is moving and changing all the time. And so from one fraction to another, everything is changing. If you use classical TPS system, registration system, you fail all the time. And by using a lot of data and a lot of different data, UNet is providing solutions that classical tools cannot provide. Yeah, this is something important when I'm discussing, and Jan has the same feeling, we use deep learning only where and when it's necessary. We do not try to solve an equation with two unknowns with deep learning. We use deep learning when we have data and when classical algorithms, linear algorithms, linear complexity algorithms cannot solve the problem. But I think the cases which are here are really worthy for deep learning.
More questions? Let me ask you a question first and then back to you. So, I'm surprised that you, the prompt gamma solution for range estimation, that you put that sort of secondary to proton radiography. In proton radiography, you really need a machine that is more than 230 MeV, and IBA doesn't have it, right?
No.
Especially in North America.
Okay. That's
because the beam just goes through the patient.
We did it in Trento. You think that I don't know what's the power.
Well, you're limited in body areas where the beam actually gets through.
The head. If you have a big fat guy from North America, you will.
Shots fired.
I want to say in the USA, it could be a problem. Yeah.
So back to prompt gamma then. Why do you think prompt gamma is?
I don't know why the IBA is not following it.
I think they are making a mistake.
You think so?
Yeah, because I think it's a very elegant method to estimate the end of range.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe there's other arguments why they are not considering it. The other technology that is also abandoned over the years is to look at PET to look at PET scanning after radiotherapy to see what the little distribution is.
That's a good point, yeah, to see the gamma emission after proton radiography to be sure that the spot is in the right place. That would be good. I was not aware about this technology, but
well, it's complicated because there is the biodistribution of these. Means biology on top of physics, which washes out the distribution. So
yeah, but you're right. The gamma camera does not depend. You don't have to cross the body, so you don't need a sufficiently powerful ion beam to cross the body. You just have to check where is the gamma.
No, but I wanted just to hear whether there's any specific reason why.
No. Maybe commercial reason.
Okay.
So I have two questions. One is, have you encountered scenarios where UNET is not getting the job done and you need to do something new?
Yeah, it seems that some people are publishing paper where deep learning is completely failing. We didn't observe that in our data set. And we have had a big data set because my two PhD students have taken their car and convinced all the regional hospitals to give the contoured radio, and so we have a very large data set, and we didn't observe big failures on what we do. Yeah.
And the second question is about the big data set. What is big for, let's say, contouring the vessels?
The set that we have hundreds or maybe thousands of patients. I don't have the size of the set. What is specific in this set is that we have a lot. We have very good CT which are contoured, and the cone beam CT is taken in the treatment room, but has no contours. So we have hired a young lady who's contouring a lot of hundreds, not thousands, of pictures, and we have that contours on the cone beam CT.